Hello and welcome back to the show. Today we are doing a special edition of the Everton reviews. It is Everton versus Fulham in the quarterfinals of the League Cup, in which Everton had to bow out. We've been dismissed from the Cup. Unfortunately, on the wrong side of luck in this one, we lose on penalties 7-6 after being able to send the game into penalties, because for a while there it looked like things weren't going to go our way, but unfortunately, I say unfortunately because we prolonged the game a little bit more, only to instill a bit of false hope that we were actually going to advance. But we were very, very close. Very close. One penalty away. A lot of the talk has been around Amadou Onana and that penalty because we were up 4-3. If he just scores the penalty and puts the game beyond doubt, the game is literally over. He prolongs the game further, and as we've seen in, sending the game to penalties and instilling that false hope, prolonging the game only resulted in bad things. We saw a shit Garnagay penalty. The minute he stood up to the plate, you knew it was written in the stars, because that guy skies shots from outside the box for fun. And you knew, this one was going to be no different. There was going to be a bad result out of it. So, look, I'm not going to really criticize the penalties too much. Amadou Onana looked very nonchalant with that penalty. It looked like a Jorginho penalty, except Amadou Onana is not Jorginho, and obviously we saw the results. And it wasn't a good result, was it? So I think the good thing is we have a manager who, like in the post-game presser, he just said everyone's got their routine, and the routine just didn't pay off this time. I hope a moment like this, Amadou Onana can learn from it. And equally, I think a coach like Sean Dyche can hold him to account and say, well, how are you going to recycle this moment into something that's actually going to help you better yourself, as opposed to using it as a way to sort of doubt yourself. It's about using it the right way and having the right perspective. I think Amadou Onana has the right people around him to be able to overcome, those difficulties and struggles of being a footballer and, in essence, getting your team knocked out of the cup. That's one of those moments. That's one of those difficulties. So I think he's going to be all the better player for it. But let's actually talk about the game itself. I'm going to start with the player of the game. And I really liked what Sean Dyche, or really have liked what Sean Dyche has done the last couple of games in terms of being versatile, testing a few things out, seeing where players fit. If there is a little bit more versatility beyond their dominant position. Jared Branthwaite played left back. We saw James Garner play more advanced. We saw Idrissa Gana Gueye back into the team and Michael Keane playing at centre back. So there were some really good things to extract out of that. I'm going to give my player of the game today to Nathan Patterson. And there are a number of reasons why I'm going to give him player of the match. I think the two things that stand out to me, which were very consistent in his game today, was the overlap run, which I think is an asset of his game that I don't think he utilizes enough, yet he has the tools to do so. It is a little bit of a concern when he doesn't do anything with the attack and then he's got to make up all the ground to get back. But it really adds another layer to our offensive game. And I think we're going to be all the better team for it if Nathan Patterson is doing that on a consistent basis. He was able to get a few crosses in, got him in dangerous spots. It wasn't able to beat the first man, though, which I think is the next element of his game. But there were a couple times, there was one that skimmed across goal, and Beto, he bypassed the cross. If he just propped his run a little bit, he probably could have knocked it in and scored via courtesy of a tap-in. But overall, I think Nathan Patterson had some really good attacking nous about him. And the midfielders were respecting those runs. They were playing him through. And I think that's a really important thing to see as well, because you can make the run, but you can get completely neglected. And I think it was a good thing that Nathan Patterson was getting into those attacking areas. The other player I do want to name is Jared Branthwaite. But first, back to Nathan Patterson before I forget. That goal line clearance, the one where Fulham crossed it in, there was a phase of the game at the back end after we had scored where it looked like we were out on our feet. We looked really gassed. The space was starting to open up as things should, given we had played only a few days before. Abdoulaye Doucouré not playing also hurt us in that respect because he runs for a full 90 minutes and doesn't really stop. And Jack Harrison had also gone to the bench, so you were seeing a couple of players that were in the team probably on the basis that we had to chase the game as opposed to, defensively grafting. But yeah, that shot, my heart was in my throat. It was one of those things where, like, that is an Everton goal we would concede in the previous couple of seasons where 4 players ball watch and you just watch it happen. And Nathan Patterson was the only reactive player in that sequence. He was able to get in a very crucial challenge to clear the ball off the line or, dispossess the player that would have scored on the goal line. So it's those last-ditch efforts. I think he was really good with his body today as well, very physical, being able to shield the ball, win back possession for our team, all those sorts of things. But back to Branthwaite, I think he was superb today. He was also getting in some really advanced areas. I think in the first half, we were trying to send a couple lofted crosses onto the back post, in essence, to a second striker, which was him. I mean, he stands 6'4". He's pretty quick. He was doing a really good job of helping us contain the area, and sort of close things off from, Fulham even getting past the halfway line. He was doing a really good job of being physical with their defenders in order for us to have a prolonged period of possession. So he was really good in that respect. There were a couple of times it looked like Fulham were in behind, but Jared Branthwaite was pushing players like Harry Wilson off the ball, and the referee wasn't going to bite for those sort of things when Harry Wilson got to the ground. It just comes down to brute strength, and that's what Jared Branthwaite has got. He was a shining light today. I do think the centre midfield pairing weren't too bad, but in possession, much like many, very wasteful, and a lot of passes were loose. I don't know if that's a fatigue thing, but you're not going to use that as an excuse. So, I mean, they're better than that. So, we're going to have to deal with that midfield pairing unless we want to bring James Garner back into the midfield, take Garner Gay off, and then maybe play Dan Juma in a more advanced role. I did like what I saw from him when he was on the pitch. I do think, though, the reason he thrived was because things started to open up when Dan Juma was on the pitch, and those errors invariably started to resurface or surface. So I think there was a lot of space for him to move, a lot of space for him to run. I think that's where he thrives the most, when there is space. Earlier in a game, when he potentially would start a game, it's a little bit different, and perhaps you're playing a little bit more defensively, or the opposition is. So it's going to be tougher to break down. I don't think Dan Juma is suitable for that. Potentially could be, but I don't think we've seen enough from him in an Everton kit to know the answers to whether the system would enable him to actually find those spaces or not, and whether our passing play actually favours that sort of attacking nous that he may have. We saw the goal today. It was a very jammy sort of goal. It didn't come from anything like, it didn't come from the textbook. It was just a bit of jamminess. It was just a little bit of willing your way forward, sending their backs to the wall, and then, obviously all that pressure had mounted over a period of time where, we had a bit of momentum, the crowd was getting involved. I think it was the culmination of all that allowed us to score the goal. Ultimately accounted for nothing, but I do think that it is a really telling sign. Obviously, we've seen how good we are when we take the lead first. We score the first goal, we're unbeaten. And obviously the goal we conceded didn't allow us to do that today and be in that position. I think it's a really telling sign, though, that we got back into the game. The momentum was on our side. We didn't necessarily win, but in a Premier League game, you're coming away with a point, which is a really good thing to see that sort of resilience and come away from the game saying we should have won this game. I think that's been a really common trend of our losses or games where we've fallen short in some ways. That's just showing the transformation between last year and this season. We're talking about this team not in a negative light and saying, well, they never stood a chance. We've put ourselves in a position to win every single game of Premier League football and now Cup football. It's just a real shame to see us fall short in this fashion. And the other thing I wanted to mention was Michael Keane. Bro, this guy, I mean, if you want to talk the phrase written in the stars, this Michael Keane performance sort of embodied that. He scored a goal last game. The game before that, he conceded a penalty at Anfield, which ultimately was decisive as we were already one man down. And then in this game, you didn't want to concede first. And for him to ship that goal off, it is an absolute kick in the guts. Absolute kick in the guts. And you're like, well, what could have been if Amadou Onana he just kicks a football adequately? Better than a 12-year-old kid? Even a 5-year-old, I reckon, could kick the ball better than that. Maybe even a preschooler. If he just does that, if Michael Keane just lets the ball fly through to Jordan Pickford, who had that one covered. Of course, he couldn't do the exact same thing when, that sequence at the back end of the second half, when that cross came cannoning in to the centre, right in front of the face of the goal. Of course, he let that one go, not the one that actually goes back into the net. It's just those fine margins, man. It's a shame that we are saying we're out of the cup because it does feel like a missed opportunity. But that being said, you probably look at this and you say, well, Fulham really did not have a sniff. They scored a goal from an own goal, which was yet again a byproduct of our own shenanigans. Look, the penalties, we also were in pole position. Jordan Pickford got his hand to 3 or 4 of their penalties. Unfortunately, his T-Rex arms, yes, I'm going to say T-Rex arms, even though I'm an ally, and that is only reserved for opposition fans to make a joke out of. He couldn't get enough of a piece of it to be able to knock it out. And ultimately, if you're not clinical enough, if you don't complete the play, then you're done for, And we saw in the penalty shootout the exact consequences of that. That is going to do it from me. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe. It is a little setback, but we still have the win streak in the league. Every time they talk about the Aston Villa record in the Premier League at Villa Park, that home record, they never ever talk about the Everton win at Villa Park in the League Cup. So as far as I'm concerned, we've still won 4 in a row. We will see you for Everton Spurs. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good one. See you soon. Bye for now.